we're going to just go ahead and chalk up the coloring to Mercury in retrograde. I don't know. Hey, welcome to the Death of a Dream podcast. I'm excited for today's episode because I'm excited for every day's episode. Still not sure what's going on with the lighting on the video end, but here we are, living life. Okay, I'm just blaming it on the Earth's alignment. Okay, let's go ahead and ground ourselves in our greatness. You know, the daily practice where we are just amazing. Yesterday was another low day. I think the great thing is I have these, they used to be weeks, almost months of time, and my high days look like 1 week out of the month, maybe, if I got lucky that week. And now they seem to be secluded to like an hour or two of time or a couple of hours in the day. And I think that shift has really come from just the listening that's going on and the giving, right? And that's that self-love piece. Hearing, oh, girl, you just need a nap. You're tired. Go take a nap, right? And then giving that love to myself. And it's not always just a nap, right? It's not always just that easy, but being okay with whatever the intervention is in that moment and being okay with that need. Whereas before it would have been like, oh, you're so weak. Really? You need a nap? Boo-hoo, nap. Puh, right? And I'm not going to give that to myself. Or, oh my gosh, gross. You need something to eat that just like fills you with goodness, that you just want something to eat for comfort. Gross. You have no self-control, you sick, sick, sick being, right? And these are conversations that, I mean, hopefully I don't hope that you have them, but I hope for like the self-sanity that other people have these voices in their head, and I've been working to heal those voices, and obviously it's getting a little bit better because that downtime seems shorter and shorter as we continue in this work. And I think it's also the removal of the desire of it all. I don't know. It's almost as if things don't own me the way that they used to, but I can, now that there is no desire or ownership over that thing, whatever that is, now that that's gone, it seems like I can use those for the power of me versus for the power over me, if that makes sense. It probably does. I don't know. So yeah, that's my great thing. Just like having a low day, but being able to transition out of it quicker. And that's been a constant, right? Of trying to figure that out and trying to figure out what my body is saying or what it's responding to. A lot of times before I think I started paying attention to energies, a lot of times my energy wasn't out of alignment. Sometimes I was surrounded by people whose energy was out of alignment, and I allowed that to kind of sink in and changed my energetic vibration. And so I don't know, now that I'm in this world where I am alone, it isn't happening as much. And I think I've done a lot of work to better understand whose energies is whose and which ones are mine. But that's still a work in progress. And I will say this, I last week talked about my cell phone and trying to get rid of it. And this is kind of where I am with that right now. It feels great to not wake up with it, to not go to bed with it, and during the day using it, when I wake up. And then during the day, that really is a lot of my social interaction, like whether it's a phone call or a text or being on social media and commenting back. And so I do need it during the day. And that's what I established. It's good. I don't want to fall asleep with it. I don't want to wake up with it. I think it was ruling me in those hours of the day. But during the day, when I kind of shift over into work and awake mode, I think, I am in control in those hours. But it definitely, shutting down in the morning and at night, has made me a little bit more aware of just my not needing it. So it pretty much just stays in my office after I get off of work. It just stays right up here, and I go downstairs and I work on, present work, and whatever hours of the day that I have, I try to just be there. And if I do take it down to take photos or do something like that, it usually is on like airplane or do not disturb mode. So just testing that out. But I think I have realized that not using it all day long hurt my need for socializing, right? Like, I am a social being, and so felt even more disconnected. And I think that's a tool that I can definitely use and implement when I need to be disconnected. But hey, I work from home. I leave the house 2 times a week to work for an hour or 2. Otherwise, I do not leave this house. I do not talk to anyone but my children and my husband. And so I have to have kind of a social outlet as well. And that looks like my phone, as it does for a lot of people right now. The world has definitely changed, and I can't wait to get back into the regular world when it's ready to open back up and experience, better experience and understand energies and how I exist in the physical world as well. And I think just being able to dip my toe in that world slowly but surely as the world kind of opens back up has been nice for me as someone who's getting a grip and a better understanding of my own energetic flow and how that vibe can be thrown off by other people. So it has been nice to coast back in and to understand what's going on. Okay, so that's my great thing. Go ahead, take time for yourself. You owe it to yourself. Ground yourself in your greatness. Take time. Just do it. You'll get better at it. It'll become more comfortable. You'll get more confident coming and speaking to those things. You might even speak for a longer time on those things because you're so excited about it. That's what I'm saying. This is transformative if you want it to be. So let's go ahead and get started. Yesterday it was actually really funny. So some of you know, and if you don't, the backlogs of all of the different experiments that I have had trying to figure out how to make this dream a reality, how to kind of navigate this and understand where I want to end up. And so back when, and I think it was probably around August, I get this opportunity to do insurance cold calling or insurance verifying, right? Like I'm the telemarketer. I'm the one you hang up on. I most certainly am. And so I experiment with that. I enjoy it, but then I realize that they kind of like pad your stats on the front end. So then you believe that this is something that you could do. And it was good for a while. And I think, looking at the check marks of what I require from a job now versus just like, I just have to be at this salary. Like, there are so many more things that are very important to bring to that table. Do not just allow yourself to be owned by the monetary reimbursement. Like, make sure that you're calling for other things. And this whole experience, I think, has made me more aware of, just my gratefulness for money as a whole and for money and what it allows you to do. And so I do the cold calling for a while. That really gets us through until about October, and then it isn't really worth the time. And that's hard for me because I think time is one of the assets that we actually don't give away enough. And that has shifted, and I think that comes in different seasons. But my thought on time is like, use your time to try things out. Anytime that you have extra, pour that into something. If you have the extra to give, now make sure that you're doing that in blocks or doing that in ways that you're not constantly in 7 different places, right? Make sure that those things live and exist in very different boxes, and don't give away time that you don't have. But the likelihood that you have more time than you're actually giving yourself is pretty high. And your time is really not all that valuable because it doesn't actually exist. Like, if you don't talk about time in a scarcity mindset, it actually is more abundant than you're taught to believe. We're just taught that time is scarce and that it is not ever playing in our favor. And it actually is super abundant. Okay. So anyways, so probably around December, me and my husband have the hard conversations that one might have after 6 months of not really earning more than $3 an hour. And we come to terms with the fact that if I want to start chasing these dreams that I have, that is going to take money and backing and just really enough security. And my husband very lovingly said, you don't need to go make what you were making before. Just make enough so we don't have to think about that, right? Just so we're kind of back and okay, and we can start putting money in place. Anyways, whatever. We have the hard conversation. Fine. And I just start asking for the opportunity that's, meant for me, that's meant to help me transition into this place. And then I find the most amazing opportunity, and there was no struggle at all. The application process was really easy. The onboarding, everything happened very quickly, and it just all fell into place in the exact moment that it needed to. And it was amazing. And so yesterday, my employer was like, I had messed something up on my time card or something. And they called me and they're like, hey, it's okay. And I start spinning, right? Like you do when you're in trouble. And I'm like, well, I didn't really understand this. And I didn't really understand this. And I'm really sorry, but I was told this. And the employer stops me and goes, hey, this isn't like we got you type work environment. We're not trying to set anybody up to fail. You don't have to worry. I was just calling to better understand what you're going through and try to help you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, what an important call out. I had been so grossly worked into a corporate system where really you were just constantly watching your back. I feel like I just, when you get pulled over and you know that you did, or no, the cop lights turn on, but you know that you didn't do anything. And so it probably isn't, they probably aren't coming after you. But the whole entire time that cop's pulling up, you in your mind are going over what you might have done, what you did, and you're trying to come up with 1, 2, 3 of what may have happened. Do I have a tail light out? Was I speeding? What was going on? And you're trying to come up with that. And then they just blow right past you. I think that's kind of the corporate environment that I was used to. Oh, shoot. The second that ominous email comes in, I need to speak with you in my office. And you start preparing for what most certainly will be a funeral. And it was just nice and refreshing and reassuring for this employer to be like, we're not about that here. You don't have to worry. Like, no one is trying to set you up. You're good. And I just realized like how jaded I was the second that I had the initial like email kind of call on the time card mistake. I draft an email, I copy my boss. I'm like, I know how to do this. I worked in corporate long enough. Like, I will not take this lying down. And it was just amazing to have that person call me out on it, because I think we've all been a little bit jaded by the corporate world, which is why a lot of us are venturing out and figuring out how to do our own thing and really building a world that we wish existed for ourselves, right? And this culture and this model of where I'm working now, I think, is teaching me so much about how a place of employment should kind of work. Like, I don't know. It's been really amazing and really eye-opening. So anyways, that's kind of what I'm doing. That's right now how I'm earning money. And how did we shift to that place? I was pitching the book. I was trying to line up speaking things. Obviously, that's not happening as often as one may need to live off of, just given the world. And I began to feel this huge expectation around this thing that I don't know. I just felt like so much pressure for what this podcast and what the book was going to become. And that expectation was really draining my happiness around it, around just the process of creating and loving the process of speaking. And I was working myself into this world that I had been trying to promote and protect my own self from. And so I began to realize that around December that this really is draining, which is why then Jordan and I start to have the conversation about, well, maybe we need to take the pressure off of this thing so that it can become what it's supposed to become. Because what I'm learning, and have definitely learned within the past 3 weeks, is that like whatever's meant for you is going to find you, and it will happen in that time. And so for me, the taking up and the finding of the job really released the pressure and the expectation that was draining me of my happiness with doing this work. And so that was like a necessary move for us. And now, you know, and I went in with the expectations that the hours need to look like X, Y, and Z. I went in with the expectation that it needs to be flexible again, and that it needs to be work from home so that I can, you know, have meetings all morning and then go right into work and not have to waste time commuting back and forth and waste time that I could be used meeting and building this other thing. And so, boom, this pops up. It all kind of just falls in line. And then within making that move, all of a sudden, 3 more things line up with the company that I want to start and starting to build and do that work. And so now my days look more structured, definitely less time, but also the same amount of time. So waking up at 3:45 to really start the day in gratitude, a prayer, meditate, go downstairs, read, do yoga, come back upstairs, meditate, set the intentions of doing this work, do this work, publish, produce all of the assets after that, then go into full mom mode, mom for about an hour till I get kids off to school, come home, do meetings, more production of the assets from this show, do meetings every hour that I can, structure all of those, put those into the 2 hours before I clock into work for 8 hours. And then right now I'm in 2 classes and cohorts. And so 2 nights a week, I spend an additional 3 hours on the back end to build this business and start the work with that. And so that's really where my days are structured. And then weekends, I'm coaching volleyball right now. And so weekends look a little bit like that and filled with some of that time. And there are also practices that are built in there. And right now, it's all a little bit crazy, but it's all in alignment. And so I feel more energy than I have ever felt. And so the time doesn't feel like less, it feels like more. So when I sit down for those 2 hours in the morning, the goal is to pack those full of meetings and chats and discussions about what I am building and where we're going. But I think the biggest piece here was realizing that I was holding myself to timelines and expectations that really weren't maybe meant for me. Not that they never will be, just that like I was forcing a timeline that really wasn't made for me right in that moment. Otherwise those things flow, right? And I didn't expect to even be in a place where I would start my company. And it's amazing how when you let go of the expectations and you let flow come in, it sort of all makes sense and it all just lays itself out in front of you. And so for me, it was really about, reestablishing that faith, reestablishing the expectation that everything that's meant for me will find its way to me. I am abundantly aligned, and I have aligned my life in order for it to produce these kinds of things, produce this sort of karmic reaction to the flag that I am planting in the ground. And so, I think it's just like, give it over. Give it over. And the amazing thing is, where there used to be so much resistance, so much work, like pouring into making this thing happen, making all of this happen, making sure that it lined up with what my expectation for it was, for when all of this was going to happen, when there was like a lot of stress and expectation there. It's funny, since the removal of that expectation, so much more has flowed where it didn't before. And that's sort of like the funniest, ironic thing that I could say here, but it absolutely is true. Like, people have contacted. I planted the flag in the ground and texted one of my friends and said, I will no longer be asking. I will be asked. And it's really hard to trust that and to go by that. But here we are. And I have been trusting that. And so far, I have been asked. And there have been people who are closer to me that I want to ask, because I'm just like, well, is it even going to hurt? I mean, come on, just ask. And I'm like, no, we're not asking anymore. And I think the funnier thing is, I haven't had to ask. And I've still had opportunities and people reaching out. And so, can you do that work? Can you trust yourself enough? I think it just comes down to, like, if it's sucking the life out of you or draining all of your happiness, you're probably abiding by a timeline that is not meant for you. Not that the thing is not meant for you, that the timeline you're projecting probably isn't. And again, is that working in a scarcity model? Me 2 months ago, a month ago, was really in this place where, oh no, if I don't get this opportunity, I'm going to miss out. It's never going to happen. I'm never going to make it. I might as well stop everything. And now it's just like, whatever isn't meant for me just isn't. It just isn't meant for me. That's all. And now trusting and walking this new path where I'm asked versus having to ask is a whole new level up and different way of thinking. And I don't know. I haven't felt let down by it yet, but I think it took that shift and those hard conversations with my husband to say, like, we can't stay here forever. Let's go ahead and relieve some of that pressure and take that off of you so that you don't have to drain yourself of the energy and the love that you have for this, because that's a beautiful thing. And, thank goodness we have people like that in our lives who can help guide us back to ourselves and save us from ourselves at times, because I wouldn't be here right now had we not had that conversation, because I would have kept pushing and I would have probably burnt myself out on all of this at some point. And so, yeah, that's kind of the update, really working to structure my time to align with the company that we're building, the extension and expansion of what this show is related to my own personal brand, and really just diving in and then still working. So I would say, we're working to build we can't go easy on this, right? Like, the word is empire. If we're not all aware, we're not building like something small. So I don't get to sleep all day long and hang out and hope that the world's going to align with me and just know. I know that it will, but I also know that takes me putting out the vibe first for what I want. And if empire is what I want, then that is a significantly different vibe from something else that I may want. And so, right now it's just about figuring out how to match those vibrations, figuring out what that kind of turnkey solution is to finding that frequency. And for me, it's always been about happiness. And so taking the expectation out, taking my own timeline out, has been super important in finding a better place here. And still navigating, still figuring that out. But definitely, gosh, it takes away so much anxiety around trying to build something. And obviously, there's the financial side of being able to do that, to take that risk on yourself, of being able to do things that allow you to just flow versus kill, and eventually burn yourself out. And so finding the balance there, I think, has been a new challenge for me. I very much operated in a burnout culture for a very long time. That was the expectation. And if you weren't burning out, you weren't working hard enough, and someone was always trying to catch you in that game, which is why my employer was so blatantly offended by me defending myself so hard. But hey, how many of us have lived in that moment knowing that we probably are not safe? A lot of us. It's almost embarrassing. Either way, this is the mantra that I say to myself in my meditation before I come on this podcast, and I wanted to share it with you in case it would help you. And I found this on TikTok, I think, and I added a couple of things for myself. I am releasing myself of all expectations that are draining me of my happiness. I am loved. I am enough. I am worthy. I am abundantly aligned. And then I always do my mantra that calls for the words that I need to say and the ears that are ready to receive. So, if that helps, use it. As always, you're smart, you're strong, you're beautiful. What are you going to do? Change the world.